Things you should know before you buy a home in Georgia. Let's talk about that. Hi, my name is Tonya Byrd, and today we're going to be talking all about the things that you should know before you buy a home here in Georgia. Now, for me personally, I have bought 4 homes. The first 3 homes that I purchased right along with my husband, I wasn't a real estate agent. By the time we got in that 3rd home, we lived in Texas and I became a realtor. So by the time we moved over here to Georgia, I kind of knew a little bit more about buying and selling homes. And so today we're going to use some of my own personal examples as well as some of our clients that we've helped in the past on things that you should know and perhaps consider or avoid before you buy a home in Georgia. First up, resale. Now I know you're thinking, wait, what? A resale? Did I hear that right? Yes, you did. You may be like, but wait, we're just buying the house. Why are we talking about resale? Well, we're talking about resale because one day you are going to have to either upsize or downsize. And when that time comes, it could be 5 years from now, it could be 20 years from now. You want to have the most buyers available to purchase your home because that brings a good resale value. Now, one of the things in selling a house is location. You've got price and condition, and we always say that price can overcome condition, but you can never overcome that location. So when you're looking at the property that you're getting ready to buy, look at things like, is it close to a road? Do you stand outside and you can hear a major highway like the interstate in the background? Or is it near railroad tracks and you can hear that train coming right on down the tracks? Is there a big hill in the backyard? I had some sellers who had a hill in the backyard, and when I went over to list the house, I said, that's going to be feedback. People are not going to like that hill in the backyard. Also, could it be backing up against some kind of industrial or maybe commercial buildings in the backyard to where you're looking out and you're seeing these things day in and day out? These are things to consider because some buyers aren't going to like those things, and when you get ready to resell, it's going to be something that comes up and it's going to shrink your buyer pool down. Another thing to consider is upgrading the home. Now, of course, we always hear that kitchens and bathrooms are a great way to upgrade a home, and they absolutely are. The only thing I would caution you about is pay attention to what the neighbors are doing. Because if the neighbors aren't putting in big expensive granite or quartz, then you don't need to be doing those things either, because you don't want your house to be the one that is overpriced based on the competition in the area. And then there's things like pools. You will never ever get the value out of a pool if you're putting one in. Now, I'm not saying that you will not get the value of having fun and the value of relaxation and the value of creating memories around that pool. All those things are key. You just have to know that you're not going to get the monetary value out on that pool. Pools just do not appraise for the value that you're putting into them. So it's really better if you can buy a house that already has a pool in the backyard. But if you can't, just know that there is a fun value with that pool, and it's not going to equate into dollars coming back in to the resale of your home. And speaking of all these upgrades, if the house is not upgraded and you're wanting to put your own touches to it, that's perfectly fine. But are you going to have the tolerance to go through the messiness of making that happen? When we moved to our house in Texas, the house had Formica countertops, it had brass fixtures, and we always said, one day we will fix this. One day we will fix this up and live with wonderful granite countertops and brushed bronze fixtures. Did we ever do it? Not until we were getting ready to sell the house. When we put it in to get the house ready to sell, man, it sure made that house wonderful, and it made me not want to leave it. And I was just like beating myself up because I didn't do it while we live there, and we lived there for a good 9 years. And when we moved into our current house, we wanted to put a theater room in that didn't exist, and we got that sucker knocked out because we know how we are. If you don't get those things knocked out in the beginning, you might not ever get around to finishing them. So really determining whether or not you have tolerance to go through a major renovation, because if you don't have that tolerance, then perhaps you need to find a house that is already upgraded. Next up is age and size. So let's talk about age a little bit. I'm talking about those homes that are about 15 to 20 years old. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a 15 to 20-year-old home. You just need to consider that the major mechanicals, such as the appliances, your heating and air conditioning unit, your hot water heater, those things are most likely at the end of their lives. And then when you start creeping on up into that 20-year mark, the roof is probably getting very close to being at the end of its life as well. So are these things that you're going to have in your budget to be able to replace as they come to the end of their life? You know, as agents, we can always negotiate a home warranty to help out with some of those major mechanicals if they fail. Those home warranties help defer some of those costs so you don't have so much money coming out of your pocket. And if you have money in your budget to replace those things, then you should absolutely consider the age of those homes, or just find that you just got to save up for replacing those items. Size of homes is also something that, just because they come up in the MLS as small, consider that if they're on a basement, that the footprint above the basement might not be so bad because you have extra space in the basement. Or if one of the secondary bedrooms is very small and you don't have people that are going to be living in that secondary bedroom day in and day out. Maybe you're just going to have guests that come over once or twice a year. Having a smaller secondary bedroom might not be such a big deal if you have a fabulous family room. So really don't eliminate a house based on square footage without physically going into it, because you sometimes have to physically go into the space and imagine how you're going to live in it and where your things are going to go before you discount a smaller or even larger home. Another thing I see buyers making a mistake on is telling me that they only want to look at new construction or homes that were built in the last 5 years. Don't get me wrong on this. I am happy to show any buyer new construction and help them through that process. However, by only shrinking down the year built to the last 5 years, you could be missing out on a really great house that was built in the 70s or in the 80s or in the 90s or maybe even the early 2000s. And that fabulous house could have been upgraded and it could fit all of your needs and be in the perfect location. So don't stumble over that diamond in the rough because you're only looking at the past 5 years. Septic tanks. If you're gonna move to this part of Georgia, you're gonna run into some houses that have septic tanks. And if you're not familiar with septic tanks, then you should not be afraid. You only need to know a little bit about them. First thing you need to know about septic tanks is they require a larger lot. So you're most likely going to be on a ½ acre, if not more. This accommodates the tank and the drain field for that septic tank. And when you're getting ready to make an offer on a house with a septic tank, finding out whether or not the seller has had it recently pumped is key, because you want proof that that thing is in working order. If they have not had it pumped and inspected recently, then it is a negotiable point on the contract on who pays for that inspection. Either the buyer can pay for it during their due diligence period, or you can have the seller pay for it on the buyer's behalf. The other thing you need to know about septic tanks is you got to be a little bit careful about what you put down the toilet or what you put down the sink, because that tank is going to hold whatever you throw down in there. So being aware of having toilet paper that dissolves and not throwing wet wipes down the toilet, and being careful with how much grease you expose the septic tank to when you're cleaning up your dishes after a greasy meal. Those things you need to be aware of, because those things are going to the tank and it can fill up the tank fast. And so therefore, being cautious about these things. Once you move in a house with a septic tank, it's probably good to have that septic tank pumped and inspected every 3 to 5 years. And if you want more about septic tanks, I'll provide a link below that is from the EPA that explains all about how septic tanks work. But you should have no fear. Next up, termites. And boy, have I seen some termite damage in my time. Those critters are silent and they can cause a lot of damage. So when you're getting ready to make an offer on a house, having it inspected to make sure there's no termite activity is key. If there is a termite bond on the house, those things can be transferred from the seller to the buyer. And if there is not a termite bond, I highly suggest you get one. It usually costs around $500 or so to have it installed, and about maybe $150 to $200 every year to maintain that bond. I also recommend getting a repair and retreat bond, so that if you do have termite activity while you're under that bond, then the termite company will come in and repair the damage and treat the termites. So really having that set up on your house, or knowing that it's termite free before you get into it, knowing that you're going to buy that bond once you close on the house, is key. If you're not from this area, the next thing I advise buyers to do is come and visit, come stay a while. It might take more than one weekend of coming down here and really getting a feel for the place. Is where you're moving close to shopping? Is it close to the interstate because you need to hop on the interstate and get where you're going? Is it close to schools if that's important to you? You're really coming in and finding the location and making sure that the location is the prime spot for you. I was a listing agent on a house, and we had a buyer come with their buyer representative, and they wound up buying my listing. And the mistake she made is she didn't come down and see how far everything was. Her goal was to get her husband closer to work, but then in doing so, she didn't realize she was 15 minutes from the interstate, 15 minutes from shopping, and she was there for about 6 months and loved the neighborhood, loved the house, hated the location. And I would hate for you to make that same mistake because she wound up selling that thing. I wound up listing it because she thought I was so familiar with the area that's why I got the listing, to help her get it sold. But it was a really tough pill to swallow, to only be there for 6 months and to have to disrupt her whole family again for moving like twice in 1 year, all because the location was bad. And I don't want that happening to you. So come on in, visit us, stay for a minute, and make sure that the location is right for you. Last, but certainly not least, don't max out your budget. Now, I have seen people max out their budget, and as the saying goes, they're house rich and they're cash poor. Your mortgage should be about 25% of your income, because you got other things you're gonna have to pay for beyond that mortgage, such as the utility bills and your food bill and gas and all those things just to maintain the house. And you want to be able to go out and have fun, and so you don't want to max out your budget so you have no cash on hand to go do the fun things in life that you want to go do. Getting with a good lender here is key. Understanding what your max price is and what that monthly payment is going to be for you. A good lender is going to help you determine if your max budget is $500,000 Well, what does that look like in a mortgage payment? And what if you bumped it down to $450 or $400? What does that look like for a mortgage payment? And of course, we use really good lenders who can help you out with this. So if you need help finding a good lender, let us know. We're happy to help you on this. But we don't want anybody to be house rich and cash poor. That is no fun for no one. Well, there you have it. I hope these tips helped you out. And if you need help buying in the greater Atlanta area, give me and Tom a shout. We'd be glad to help you buy in the Atlanta and surrounding areas. And if you need help in your neck of the woods, let us know. We can connect you with a great realtor, and we will catch you next time. Bye. Do you want to know more about real estate? Be sure to watch this next video. And don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll know when I drop my next video.